Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
Of every guy in this room, all right? Just when you could have looked the other way, when your job got hard, and it was long before today, all right, you guys just came together even more. All right, you did. All right, these wins.
What's happening to America's most exciting football team? The Minnesota Vikings have gone from Super Bowl contenders to statistical nightmare in record time, and the numbers are absolutely devastating. This isn't just a rough patch or a minor slump. This is a full-blown offensive catastrophe that has Vikings fans questioning everything they thought they knew about their beloved team. Right now, as we speak, the Minnesota Vikings are running one of the worst offenses in the entire National Football League. Not just bad, not just struggling, we're talking historically terrible, bottom of the barrel, worst in the conference kind of bad. And the most shocking part, this is a team with Justin Jefferson, one of the absolute best receivers in football. This is a team with Christian Darrisaw protecting the quarterback. This is a team with Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson as weapons. On paper, this offense should be unstoppable. In reality, it's completely broken. Let's talk about the brutal statistics that paint this horrifying picture. When you look at offensive EPA per play, which measures how effective a team is at moving the ball and scoring points, the Vikings are absolutely drowning. They're not just the worst team in their division. They're the worst offense in the entire NFC. The only team even close to their level of incompetence is the New Orleans Saints, and that's a team everyone already knows is a complete dumpster fire with no weapons and shaky quarterback play. But here's what makes it even more terrifying for Vikings fans. The graph showing their offensive performance over the last several weeks reveals something even more disturbing. They're getting worse. 4 weeks ago, fans were saying it couldn't possibly get any worse. Well, surprise, it did get worse. The downward trend is undeniable, and it's accelerating. The Vikings aren't anywhere near competing with teams like the Panthers, Cardinals, Buccaneers, or Falcons. Teams that nobody expected to have explosive offenses are leaving Minnesota in the dust. The Vikings are lumped in with the Saints at the absolute bottom, and that's a sentence nobody expected to write about a team with this much talent. But wait, it gets even more depressing. When you break down what happens on Vikings offensive drives, the numbers are absolutely shocking. Minnesota ranks 29th in the NFL for offensive series results. Think about that for a second. 29th. Out of 32 teams, only 3 franchises are worse at moving the football. On their drives, the Vikings are scoring touchdowns only 7% of the time. 7%. That's not a typo. In today's NFL, where offenses are supposed to be unstoppable and scoring is at an all-time high, the Vikings are finding the end zone less than 1 out of every 10 possessions. The first down statistics are equally horrifying. Minnesota is picking up at least 1 first down on only 58% of their drives. That puts them among the absolute worst in the league, sitting just ahead of the Cleveland Browns, a team that's become the laughingstock of professional football. Most competitive NFL teams are converting first downs at rates above 60%. Elite teams like the Kansas City Chiefs are doing it 69% of the time. The Vikings can barely crack 58%, which means more than 4 out of every 10 drives end without Minnesota even moving the chains once. Field goals, the Vikings are kicking them on 8% of drives. Punts, 17%. Turnovers, a devastating 10% of the time. This offense isn't just struggling to score touchdowns. They're struggling to do anything positive whatsoever. They're not scoring. They're barely moving. They're giving the ball away at alarming rates. This is a complete and total systematic failure. The efficiency metrics tell an equally grim story. When you examine early down rushing and passing offensive efficiency, the Vikings are once again at the bottom of the league. They're grouped with the Las Vegas Raiders, Tennessee Titans, and Cleveland Browns. These are teams that everyone knows are tanking or rebuilding or completely falling apart. The Vikings were supposed to be contenders. Even teams like the Jets, Saints, Panthers, and Dolphins, franchises that have been absolute disasters this season, rank ahead of Minnesota in offensive efficiency. The Vikings have become truly one of the worst offenses in professional football, and there's no sugarcoating it. A massive part of this catastrophic failure falls squarely on the quarterback position. The advanced metrics paint an absolutely brutal picture. When you look at PFF grades and EPA per play combining passes, rushes, and penalties, J.J. McCarthy sits near the absolute bottom of the league. Carson Wentz has been mixed in there with similarly terrible numbers. Max Bromer, when he's played, has been equally ineffective. No matter who's taking snaps for Minnesota, the quarterback play has been absolutely atrocious. This raises a genuinely terrifying question for Vikings fans. Is Minnesota running the worst offense in the entire NFL? It's legitimately either the Vikings or the Cleveland Browns at this point. Think about how insane that question is when you consider the talent on this roster. The Vikings have Christian Darrisaw, Jordan Addison, and Justin Jefferson. Jefferson is arguably the best receiver in football. The fact that we're even having this conversation in early December is absolutely mind-boggling and deeply concerning for everyone associated with this franchise. So who's actually to blame for this unprecedented disaster? When an offense is this catastrophically bad, it's never just one person or one position group. This is a multi-layered failure involving coaches, players, scheme, and execution. But if we're being honest and breaking down the blame pie chart, the responsibility falls into several clear categories. The quarterback position takes the biggest slice of blame, probably around 50%. Minnesota is getting the worst quarterback play in the entire National Football League. Maybe Cleveland is right there with them in terms of awfulness, but the Vikings are definitely in that conversation for dead last. Whether it's Carson Wentz, J.J. McCarthy, or Max Bromer taking snaps, the results have been consistently terrible. The quarterback is supposed to be the most important position in football, and Minnesota has gotten absolutely nothing from that spot all season long. But here's where it gets interesting and controversial. Head coach Kevin O'Connell deserves about 40% of the blame for this offensive implosion. O'Connell has been getting criticism from fans and analysts, and much of it is completely justified. The biggest problem? He has absolutely refused to change his offensive system or cater to a young, inexperienced quarterback. O'Connell is running this offense like he still has a veteran quarterback in the huddle. He's calling plays like Kirk Cousins or Sam Darnold is back there making throws. He hasn't adjusted anything to help his struggling rookie. The refusal to run the football is maddening. The insistence on deep passing concepts without easy check-down options is killing this offense. On way too many passing plays, the Vikings don't have quick outlets available. Everything is 10, 15, 20 yards downfield. O'Connell keeps running these elaborate 20-yard crosses and 20-yard corner routes without giving his young quarterback simple, high-percentage throws to fall back on when things break down. Where are the slants? Where are the quick flats? Where are the simple hitch routes that let a quarterback get into rhythm? The Vikings never come out and run an all-hitch concept where everyone goes 5 yards, turns around, and lets the quarterback just read the defense and deliver. These are basic quarterback-friendly concepts that almost every team runs to help young signal callers build confidence, but not Minnesota, not under Kevin O'Connell. He's stubbornly sticking to his system regardless of who's taking snaps, and it's destroying this offense. The remaining 20% of blame falls on the weapons taking a step back. Jordan Addison has had way too many drops this season. Adam Thielen has been a disaster. Justin Jefferson, still the best receiver in football, doesn't quite look like the dominant force he was in 2022, 2023, and 2024. TJ Hawkinson is clearly a shell of himself after his injury. So while the talent is theoretically there, the execution and production have fallen off a cliff. But make no mistake, the majority of this disaster falls on the head coach and quarterback position. O'Connell recently talked about McCarthy and what he wants to see from his young quarterback for the rest of the season. He said he wants McCarthy to have a clear mind and just go play, but with an understanding of the decisions he makes with the ball in his hands. O'Connell emphasized that as a passer and as a runner, McCarthy needs to protect himself and make sure he can stay on the field. That's a pretty clear indication that the biggest concern with McCarthy isn't even his play at this point. It's his health. The kid keeps getting hurt, and that's becoming the dominant storyline. No matter what anyone's take is on McCarthy's performance, the number one issue is durability. Can he stay healthy? Can he make it through a full game without getting injured? Vikings fans would consider it a massive victory at this point if McCarthy could just be the starter for the remaining games and stay on the field. That's how low the bar has dropped. But beyond just staying healthy, McCarthy needs to show improvement. He's a 22-year-old kid who should be growing and developing every single day. If he shows zero improvement over these final 5 games, the Vikings offseason is going to be absolutely chaotic and potentially explosive. If McCarthy doesn't demonstrate any progress, the conversation about drafting another quarterback will come roaring back with a vengeance. Trade rumors involving Mitch Trubisky or other veteran quarterbacks will dominate the headlines. The entire evaluation of this front office's decision-making will be called into question. Hopefully McCarthy shows something tangible, some flashes of competence and potential. He probably needs to show improvement, not just for his own career, but to keep Justin Jefferson motivated and committed to being part of this organization long term. This brings up a fascinating question about process versus results. Everyone was up in arms about how Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones started their seasons with their respective teams. Both quarterbacks looked incredible in the early weeks. The statistics were mind-blowing. Between weeks 1 and 8, Daniel Jones ranked 4th in the league in EPA plus completion percentage over expected. Sam Darnold was literally first in the league from weeks 1 through 9. People were going absolutely insane, questioning why their former teams ever let these quarterbacks walk out the door. But then something interesting happened. Both quarterbacks crashed back to earth spectacularly. From weeks 9 through 14, Daniel Jones plummeted to 25th in the league. Sam Darnold dropped from first all the way down to 22nd. Suddenly, the decision-making that looked so terrible in the early season started making more sense. Maybe the process was actually correct, even if the initial results looked bad. The Vikings' thought process of not fully believing in Sam Darnold as a long-term franchise quarterback, deciding to bank on J.J. McCarthy instead, and building out the entire roster to create a more complete team actually makes sense in theory. Taking that risk on a rookie quarterback while stacking talent around him is a legitimate strategy that many successful franchises have employed. Getting a more complete team in place before your rookie quarterback takes over is textbook NFL roster construction. The problem wasn't necessarily the philosophy, it was the execution. The Vikings clearly misevaluated J.J. McCarthy's readiness for NFL action. He wasn't prepared for the speed and complexity of professional football. Beyond that, Minnesota completely whiffed on their major free agency acquisitions. The big 4 signings of Kelly, Fry, Hardgrave, and Allen have been absolute disasters. These were supposed to be the veteran pieces that stabilized the roster and helped the young quarterback. Instead, they've been massive disappointments across the board. So even though the results haven't been there, there's an argument that the thought process was still fundamentally sound. Building a stacked team around a rookie quarterback who's coming into a franchise fresh off a successful season is a reasonable approach. The appreciation for at least trying to follow a logical blueprint has to count for something. But here's the critical mistake that cannot be overlooked. The Vikings absolutely should have brought in a high-end backup quarterback. This is where the front office completely failed. Minnesota should have pursued Jacoby Brissett. They should have gone after Mitch Trubisky. They needed a competent veteran who could step in and manage games if the rookie struggled or got hurt. Right now, with J.J. continuously struggling and getting injured, having someone like Mitch Trubisky behind center would have completely changed this season. The Vikings wouldn't be sitting at 4 wins and 8 losses. Would they be above 500? Maybe, maybe not, but they definitely wouldn't be this bad. They severely undervalued the backup quarterback position, and it's cost them dearly. The biggest mistake of the Vikings offseason is honestly still letting Sam Darnold walk out the door, even though the process of moving on from him made strategic sense. Sometimes you need to override the process and trust what you see with your own eyes. Darnold had shown flashes of being a capable starter. Having him as a bridge quarterback for 1 more year while McCarthy developed would have been the smart, safe move. But Minnesota didn't do that, and now they're paying the price. The offensive collapse has been so severe that it's forced everyone to reevaluate everything they thought they knew about this team. This was supposed to be a franchise on the rise, a team that could compete for division titles and playoff spots. Instead, they're running one of the least effective offenses in modern NFL history. They can't score touchdowns. They can barely move the ball. Their quarterback situation is a revolving door of incompetence. Their head coach refuses to adapt his system. Their expensive free agents have flopped spectacularly. Vikings fans are experiencing something they never imagined possible. Watching Justin Jefferson, one of the most talented receivers to ever play the game, completely wasted in an offense that can't get him the ball. Jefferson's talent is being squandered by scheme, quarterback play, and coaching decisions. That alone should be considered a fireable offense. When you have a generational talent like Jefferson and you can't figure out how to build an even average offense around him, something is fundamentally broken at every level of your organization. The question now becomes, where do the Vikings go from here? With 5 games remaining in the season, what can this team actually accomplish? Realistically, they're playing for pride and evaluation at this point. The playoff hopes are essentially dead. The season is lost. What matters now is whether J.J. McCarthy can show enough improvement and durability to justify the faith the organization placed in him. What matters is whether Kevin O'Connell can finally adapt his scheme to put his players in position to succeed. What matters is whether this roster can salvage any momentum heading into what promises to be a crucial offseason. The Vikings are at a crossroads. They can either write this season off as a learning experience, make necessary changes, and come back stronger in the next year. Or they can continue down this path of stubbornness and denial, refusing to acknowledge their mistakes, and set themselves up for years of mediocrity. The early returns are not encouraging. This offense isn't just bad by Viking standards, it's bad by NFL standards. It's historically, statistically, measurably terrible in ways that should alarm everyone from ownership down to the equipment managers. For fans who invested their time, money, and emotional energy into this team, the disappointment is crushing. Nobody expected this. Nobody saw this collapse coming. The Vikings had talent, they had excitement, they had potential. Instead, they've delivered one of the most disappointing seasons in franchise history, and that's saying something for an organization that's never won a Super Bowl and has a history of heartbreaking moments. The silver lining, if you can even call it that, is that hitting rock bottom sometimes forces organizations to make necessary changes they've been avoiding. Maybe this disaster is exactly what the Vikings needed to truly evaluate their coaching staff, their quarterback situation, and their roster construction philosophy. Sometimes you need everything to fall apart before you can properly rebuild. Minnesota is certainly getting that opportunity right now. As we watch the final 5 games of this season unfold, Vikings fans will be looking for any signs of life, any glimpses of hope, any reason to believe that better days are ahead. Can J.J. McCarthy stay healthy and show development? Can Kevin O'Connell finally adjust his offense? Can the weapons step up and make plays? Can this defense carry a historically bad offense to a few more wins? These are the questions that will define the end of this nightmare season. What do you think? Is J.J. McCarthy the future of this franchise, or did the Vikings make a catastrophic mistake? Should Kevin O'Connell be on the hot seat for his refusal to adapt? What was the biggest mistake Minnesota made this offseason? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because Vikings fans need to stick together during these dark times. We want to hear your takes, your frustrations, your hopes, and your predictions for what comes next. Make sure you smash that like button if you appreciate honest, no-nonsense coverage of your Minnesota Vikings. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our breaking news and analysis. We're building an incredible community of passionate Vikings fans who aren't afraid to have real conversations about this team, and we want you to be part of it. Share this video with every Vikings fan you know who's been wondering what the hell happened to this offense. Let's get the conversation started and hold this franchise accountable for the disaster we're all witnessing. Skol Vikings, and let's hope better days are ahead.